like Indiana's growing life sciences sector will benefit. Let me say again, I rise in support of these agreements because I believe that trade means jobs, and America and Indiana need jobs like never before. I urge my colleagues in both parties to join in this bipartisan measure, and let's move this bill to the Senate and to the President.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin. Does gentleman continue to reserve? Gentleman from Maine.
May I inquire how much time each side has?
Gentleman from Maine has 11 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, has 8 minutes remaining, and Mr. Camp has 6.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I thank the gentleman for the time. Every time a president, Democrat or Republican, asks Congress to approve a trade deal, they give us these wildly optimistic projections of how many jobs these deals are going to create. Sadly, this administration is no different. President Obama has suggested that the Korea Free Trade Agreement will create 70,000 new jobs. The record shows just how wrong that claim is. In the 1990s, President Clinton suggested that NAFTA would create over 200,000 jobs. Well, here's the reality. Since NAFTA passed in December 1993, America has lost 5.15 million jobs, lost 5.15 million manufacturing jobs. 384,000 of these jobs were lost in my home state of North Carolina. In 2005, President Bush claimed that CAFTA was a pro-jobs bill that would stem the tide of U.S. manufacturing job losses. But since CAFTA passed in September of 2005, America has lost 2.4 million manufacturing jobs. Here we have roughly 9.1% unemployment in this country, due in no small part to the Washington elite jamming these job-destroying trade agreements down our throats. Americans do not want free trade. A recent NBC Wall Street Journal poll showed that 69% of the American people believe that free trade has cost American jobs. The poll has shown that 61% of Tea Party supporters believe that trade agreements have hurt this nation. It's time we started listening to the will of the American people and doing what is in the best interest of the American people, not in the best interest of the foreign nationals who desperately want to take our jobs. Madam Speaker, I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will show their true American colors and vote no, no, no on these 3 trade agreements. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Madam Speaker, at this time I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. ROSKAM.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as the public is listening to this, I think they're kind of collectively going, whew. Finally, there's something that's going on in Congress. Finally, there's something going on with the other body. Finally, there's something going on with the White House that is common ground around a very simple premise, and that's this. No cost job creation. Doesn't cost a single dime. For my home state, the proof is in the pudding. This means it's going to help 145,000 Illinois jobs right now that are tethered within 650 companies that are dealing with exports. This deal helps them. 25% of all manufacturing jobs in my home state of Illinois are related to exports. And let's face it, 95% of the world's consumers, Madam Speaker, live outside of the United States. So you know what this trade deal does? This says, game on. The U.S. can compete. Give us a fair playing field, and game on. We can compete. These were hard-headed, hard-nosed negotiations led by Chairman Camp and the White House and Ranking Member Levin and others. These were tough deals that were put together that were not just weak handshakes. This was staring down opponents and finally coming to common ground and putting something together that has a great deal of possibility, a great deal of promise in a country that is desperate, I mean absolutely desperate for solutions. And this is a remedy. This is a way for us to move forward. It's important from a strategic point of view. We've got one of our nation's best friends poised in Asia, the 10th largest economy in the world, a country that has moved from the devastation of the Korean War, that has transcended all of that and is now a donor nation, and we've got the opportunity to be in a unique and strategic relationship with them. And this is our opportunity to move forward. And I think we need to support all of these FTAs, and I urge their passage. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman's time has expired. Does the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, wish to continue reserving? Gentleman from Maine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Ohio who has fought harder and longer for fair trade than any member I've served with, Ms. Capter.
Gentlewoman from Ohio is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank my dear colleague, Mr. Michaud, who has fought equally hard, and I'm proud to stand here on behalf of the communities and workers and businesses of our country that want to compete on a level playing field. The problem with our trade policies is we export more jobs than products. The gentleman talks about possibility. I don't want possibility. I want results. And when you look at what's happened over the last quarter century, we don't have any balanced trade accounts. They're all in the red. And it snuffs out economic growth. Didn't anybody here take math? Look at the balance sheet. It's all negative. This is Korea today. All negative. It's been negative. It's already negative. What difference does this deal make? It only says maybe. Maybe Korea will allow us to sell more than 7,450 cars in their market, when they're selling 500,000 here already? Isn't reciprocity, shouldn't that be at the heart of our trade deals? We've got a $500 billion trade deficit. How many times do you have to be hit over the head before you say, you know what, this isn't working? Soybeans aren't enough. Cranberries aren't enough. Look at the outsourcing of America from coast to coast. Our people's wages are going down. Their standard of living is going down. Their jobs have been outsourced. They're losing their homes. Unemployment is stuck. GDP isn't rising. Is anybody here listening? Is anybody paying attention? This is just another example of powerful Washington elites being totally out of step with Main Street and the American people. I'm proud of the Tea Partiers who are out there organizing, and I'm proud of the Occupy Wall Street people because they're saying, you folks, you are out of step up here in Washington. Pay attention to what's happening on Main Street. I oppose this agreement with Korea as well as Colombia and Panama and ask this Congress to have some real common sense and move to trade balance rather than trade deficit.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Kinsick.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of the South Korea Free Trade Agreement, which is the most significant trade agreement the United States has negotiated in more than 16 years, and I thank the leadership of our chairman, Mr. Camp, Mr. Brady, and Mr. DREIER in this regard. The International Trade Commission's analysis shows that the South Korean agreement will increase U.S. exports to South Korea by at least $9.7 billion annually. The tariff cuts alone will add $10.1 billion to the U.S. economy annually, and that U.S. exports to South Korea will increase by nearly 30% more than imports from South Korea. The economic activity that will result from the South Korean agreement will mean thousands of new jobs here at home. The Commerce Department has estimated that every $1 billion in exports creates 6,000 new jobs. And in particular, the South Korean agreement is especially beneficial for agriculture. In the 23rd District of Texas, I have the privilege to represent many agricultural producers. This agreement would be a huge win for American farmers and ranchers by ensuring that our competitors, who are also seeking trade agreements with Korea, are not at an advantage.
Fired. Gentleman from...
Thank you. You're back.
Does the gentleman yield additional time? No. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
Could you give us each our remaining
Sure.
time?
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin has 8 minutes. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 3.5 minutes.
Has how
Gentleman
much?
from Maine has 7.5 minutes.
I didn't hear that.
Gentleman from Mr. Camp has 3.5 minutes.
3.5? All right, so I'm going to close. What order should we use, Mr. Michaud? I think myself and then Mr. Camp. That's the appropriate order.
I believe I have possibly 2 more speakers. We're just trying to locate them.
Okay, we'll wait.
Does the gentleman from Maine have additional speakers? Okay.
I'll reserve at this time.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. Recognition.
I guess Madam Speaker, our speakers are not here, so why don't we begin with closing?
Gentleman from Maine is recognized for 7.5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I rise today as a former mill worker who punched the time clock for over 29 years at the Great Northern Paper Company in East Millinocket, Maine. What I've seen firsthand is devastation that these free trade agreements can do to our communities. This agreement is the most economically significant since NAFTA, and its consequences for Americans' middle class will be enormous. Since NAFTA, we have lost more than 5 million manufacturing jobs, and we've seen more than 50,000 factories close in the last 10 years alone. The Korea FTA will bring more of the same. It will cost us more manufacturing jobs, it will shut down more factories, and it will ship more jobs overseas, all at a time of 9% unemployment when the American middle class can least afford it. My colleagues have already highlighted the many reasons to oppose the Korea FTA, but I want to highlight 2 of those issues again. First, it does nothing to protect the U.S. in the face of Korea's currency manipulation. And second, this agreement isn't just a giveaway to Korea, it's also a giveaway to China. Korea has a history of manipulating its currency to boost its exports, once in 1988 and twice in 1989. The U.S. Treasury Department officially labeled Korea a currency manipulator. Even though the Treasury stopped officially identifying currency manipulators, in their February and May report of 2011, they stated explicitly, and I quote, "Korea should adopt a greater degree of exchange rate flexibility and less intervention," end of quote. The International Monetary Fund agrees. In August of this year, the IMF stated that the won was undervalued by 5 to 20%. The fact is, Korea manipulates its currency. Our own Treasury Department recognizes it, but the FTA does nothing to protect American businesses and workers from it. You only have to look at Mexico's 1994 devaluation of the peso to see how effectively an undervalued currency can wipe out an FTA's benefits. Our trade balance with Mexico has never been positive since. Without a provision to protect us from the won undervaluation, Korea's exports will continue to be cheaper than our own exports. This Korean advantage will wipe out the FTA's tariff benefits for American companies and cost American workers their jobs. Candidate Barack Obama recognized this threat, claiming that as president he would, and I quote, insist that our trade deals include prohibition against illegal subsidy and currency manipulation, end of quote. But this FTA includes no such prohibition at all. And second, this agreement is not just good for Korea, it's great for China too. Today, we're actually voting on an FTA that will be an outright boon for China, the auto parts sector. The agreement's rules of origin requires that only 35% of the Korea content value be put from Korea or in the U.S. We have two FTAs with car-producing countries, NAFTA and the Australia FTA. In the Australia FTA, the content requirements are 50%, and in the NAFTA, the content requirements are 62.5%. Korea's car production in 2010 was almost equal to that of Canada and Mexico's combined, yet the Korea FTA contains requirements that are much lower than NAFTA. By allowing the 65% of a car content value to come from a third country, we're opening the door for that 65% to come from, guess who? China. As a result, these rules of origin will be devastating to American auto parts industry. The U.S. auto supply chain is already facing challenges from China. According to the Commerce Department 2010 report titled On the Road, China auto parts exports to the U.S. have increased 43% from 2004 to 2009, and they are expected to account for an increased share of the U.S. auto parts in the future. In fact, Commerce predicts that many auto part companies will continue to move production to China in an effort to reduce cost and remain competitive. If this FTA passes, that's not a prediction, that's a guarantee. I've already mentioned the fact that we have lost more than 50,000 factories since 2001. Before voting today, I urge you to imagine how many more factories will close if we were to pass this agreement, and to think about the devastation that will be brought to those towns when that happens. I oppose it because it will devastate our manufacturing sector at a time when we need to rebuild it. I oppose it because this president promised hope and change, not more of the same. I oppose it because in my hometown, unemployment is more than 28%. I oppose it because I want to create jobs in the United States, not South Korea, and definitely not in China. As a former mill worker from East Millinocket, and on behalf of America's middle class, I urge my colleagues to oppose the Korea FTA agreement. At this time, I'd ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the AFL-CIO in opposition to all three free trade agreements.
Without objection.
I'd like to yield to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Kissel, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
I thank my friend for yielding. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into record 27,000 petitions from American textile workers expressing opposition to the Korean Free Trade Agreement.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record Congresswoman Sutton from Ohio.
Without objection. Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the AFL-CIO on Korea's labor violations.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent for the Congresswoman from California, Mrs. Sanchez, to submit
Without
for the
objection.
record.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a resolution from the League of United Latin American Citizens expressing opposition to the Free Trade Agreement.
Objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now I would like to yield to the Congressman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Critz, for the purpose of asking for unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the United Steelworkers in opposition to the Korea Free Trade Agreement.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I'd yield to the Congresswoman from Maine, Ms. Pingree, for the purpose of asking for unanimous consent.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the Building Construction Trades Department of the AFL-CIO in opposition to all 3 FTAs.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield to the representative from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, for the purpose of unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record 2 letters opposing the Korean Free Trade Agreement, one from the American Manufacturing Trade Action Coalition and another from the United States Industrial Fabric Institute.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield for a purpose of unanimous consent to Mr. Lipinski from Illinois.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to this job-killing trade bill, and I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers in opposition to the Korea FTA.
Without objection.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield to the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox, for the purpose of unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a statement from the National Council of Textile Organizations in opposition to the Korea Free Trade Agreement.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield to the Congresswoman from California, Mr. Woolsey, for the purpose of unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades in opposition to the Korea FTA.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask unanimous consent for the purpose of unanimous consent to Mrs. Chapter to enter remarks into the record.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the hardest working workers in America, the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers, Iron Shipbuilders, Blacksmiths, Forgers, and Helpers, in opposition to this Korean Free Trade Agreement.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield to the Congresswoman from Ohio, Ms. Sutton, for the purpose of unanimous consent request.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in opposition to the Free Trade Agreement.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Critz, for the purpose of a unanimous consent
Without objection.
request.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the International Longshore and Warehouse Union in opposition to the Korea Free Trade Agreement.
Without objection. Gentleman from Maine has 30 seconds remaining.
I yield back 30 seconds.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr.
I yield
Levin.
myself my remaining time.
Gentleman is recognized for 8 minutes.
This is an important discussion, and I want to be clear what is really at stake here. It's the automotive industry of this country, but it's more than that. There's a basic principle involved in the Korea FTA issue, and that is whether we will replace one-way trade with two-way trade. When this was negotiated by the Bush administration, it failed to take the most important step relating to Korea. They were shipping hundreds of thousands of cars to the United States. We were shipping, at that time, less than 10,000. So this indeed, while it mainly involved automotive, and that was 75% of our deficit, it was even more than that. Opening up markets for our goods produced in the United States of America. This was a Make It in America issue. And there was a Korean iron curtain against our products. By the way, not only automotive, but refrigerators and others. The number one priority of the Koreans was to eliminate the 2.5% U.S. tariff. Because if you ship 700,000 cars, that's a lot of money. We said to the administration, no way. We were not going to let the Korean Free Trade Agreement be approved if it continued to embody one-way trade. The Korean ambassador met with Mr. Rangel and myself often, and the trade minister, and they said, we aren't going to talk about it. And we said, well, if you don't talk, there'll be no agreement. And then what happened was that the new administration came into being, the Obama administration, and it began to work on this issue. And what happened was there were major changes in the agreement. Instead of the elimination of the tariff on most vehicles immediately, it was delayed to the 5th year. And on trucks, it was delayed for 8 years to give time to make sure that the one-way street became a two-way street. That has been accomplished. And to make entirely sure of this, there were provisions to make sure that they could no longer use their tax provisions and their environmental standards to keep out our products. And to make it even safer, we made sure that there was a safeguard. So if there's a surge of automotive products into the United States, we could defend ourselves. That was unique. And that's why the big three are saying the following. I quote, as representatives of the largest exporting sector, this FTA will help open up an important auto market for Chrysler, Ford, and GM exports. Our companies make the best cars and trucks on the road, and we are excited for the export opportunity this agreement represents. And that's why the UAW has indicated its support, because workers making their cars will now be able to see that their cars can be shipped to Korea. And Ford has said they're going to use Korea as a base to penetrate with American products the markets of the rest of Asia. So that's what this is all about. No, it won't be China getting into the U.S. It will be the U.S. getting into Korea. That's really what this is all about. I want to say a word about the issue relating to issues of transshipment. We insisted in the FTA that there be provisions relating to transshipment, and I want to quickly refer to them. If Customs has any doubt about a shipment, it can require Korean exporters to provide documentation showing that the goods qualify for FTA treatment. If a Korean exporter refuses or the document is not acceptable, Customs can deny FTA treatment to the good. U.S. Customs can also do site visits, this is something different, to Korean factories to verify information. And if our customs officials are denied access or the visit shows problems, they can deny entry to the Korean goods. And exporters who intentionally or repeatedly make false claims are subject to penalties. I have a letter embodying this from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and I ask insertion in the record. I also ask insertion in the record the letter that I referred to from the Automobile Association and from the UAW. I also want to quote the letter from the statement from the Motor and Equipment Manufacturers Association. It says as follows. The pending FTAs offer real opportunities for parts manufacturers and our employees in two of the fastest growing regions, Asia Pacific and South America. We can ill afford to neglect these and other markets as key competitors. I ask that this letter from MEMA be inserted in the record. So that's what the issue is here today. We faced a one-way market with impenetrable barriers. These are now being torn down. This is a jobs bill. This is a jobs bill. We have to be able to compete, and our auto industry can now compete. In order to be able to compete effectively, we have to tear down the markets of other countries and make sure that our markets are not only open to them, but their markets are open to us. We worked very hard to make this happen. It wasn't an easy job. There were times when the administration, perhaps the new one, the Obama administration, was going to settle for something less than was necessary. We pressed effectively. The Obama administration rose to the occasion and in the end said to Korea, you must agree to open the market or we will not send this agreement, this revised agreement, to the U.S. Congress. This revised agreement has now been sent here. I urge its support.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a letter from the International Brotherhood of Teamsters in opposition to the Korean, Panama, and Colombia Free Trading Agreement, and also ask unanimous consent to place a statement in the record of my support for trade adjustment assistance and also opposing the Korea, Colombia, and Panama Free Trade Agreement.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman's recognized for 3.5 minutes.
And would yield to the gentleman from California.
Thank you, gentlemen. This agreement will break down trade barriers. Frankly, it will level the playing field for 19,000 small and medium-sized businesses here in the United States and the farmers here who export into this market. It means 280,000 new American jobs, and frankly, it means $10 billion in new exports. And let's remember this. Europe has this trade agreement. It went into effect on July 1st. They've seen a 17% increase in their exports into the market in South Korea at our expense. Why? Because, frankly, U.S. exports to Korea currently face an average tariff of 12.2%. And it's frankly 49% for agricultural products. If we can bring that down, their tariffs are higher than ours. If we can bring that down, we can get that market share. We can increase that trade and develop these jobs, and the agreement also removes the barriers on and provides transparency. It provides property rights. It has rules on competition that makes U.S. businesses much more competitive in Korea, that gives them access into that market. I yield back to the gentleman from Michigan.
Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I do want to just touch on some points raised by Mr. Levin. And we did work closely together on the supplemental agreement last year with the administration, with automakers, with auto workers. And that is incorporated in the legislation before us today. It does address, as Mr. Levin pointed out, key tariff and non-tariff barriers, including numerous provisions to ensure that South Korea cannot use a regulatory system or process to block our exports. The International Trade Commission estimates that the removal of non-tariff barriers alone will add an additional between $48 and $66 million in new exports. That's in addition to the $194 million in new exports expected from lower Korean tariffs on autos alone. Inaction on the Korean trade agreement has allowed the European Union and other competitors to step in and take our market share. That's diminished our leadership in Asia. The Korean trade agreement is key to our engagement in Asia, and it will be a critical counter to Chinese influence in the region. We've heard a lot about China today, but how do we counter Chinese influence in the region through this agreement? So this agreement also, I think, is critically important because it deepens our ties with a strong and important ally. The United States and South Korea have had a 60-year history of standing together, and this agreement is really a step forward in our bilateral relationship and is an important step that we need to take today. I would urge passage of this agreement. It is has been endorsed, and I have a 4-page list of organizations, associations, including the American Farm Bureau, the Business Roundtable, Heritage, other groups, a 4-page list, many organizations supporting the passage of this agreement, and ask unanimous consent to submit that in the record and urge passage of this agreement and yield back the balance of my time.
Without objection, and the gentleman yields back the balance of his time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 425, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to implement the United States-Korea Free Trade Agreement.
The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed. Gentleman from Michigan.
Ask for a recorded vote.
Does the gentleman ask for the yeas and the nays?
I do.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Gentleman from Michigan.
I ask unanimous consent that the Speaker may postpone further proceedings on the motion to concur in the Senate amendment of H.R. 2832 as though under Clause 8A1A of Rule 20.
Objection. Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of the motion to concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 2832 will now resume. The clerk will report the title.
H.R. 2832, an act to extend the generalized system of preferences and for other purposes. Senate amendment.
What purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
At this time, Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentlewoman from Kansas, Ms.
Gentlewoman from Kansas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Chair for yielding. 3.5 trade deals that we have taken up today have bipartisan support. The 3 pending free trade agreements and the GSP extension within this bill. Both parties in both chambers agree that these important trade pacts will grow our economy, create jobs, and make America more competitive in the global marketplace. Sadly, however, the bipartisan, bicameral approval of the merits of these trade deals did not keep the Washington gamesmanship at bay. For nearly 10 months, as they pushed for an extended and enlarged, expanded TAA program, our colleagues in the Senate allowed the GSP to lapse, holding American jobs hostage until their political allies could be pacified with a sufficient payoff. This delay wasn't simply an intellectual exercise either. It hurt real businesses, real families, and cost us real jobs in my home state of Kansas. Take the Burger Company in Atchison, Kansas. The family-owned Burger Company manufactures leather goods for sale across the United States. But due to the increased cost of materials caused by the lapse in the GSP, Burger has lost customers to foreign competitors like China, causing lower profits and placing real Kansas jobs at risk. I'm voting for this bill because we need GSP to be reauthorized immediately, but I'm extremely disappointed that Senate Democrats have again risked the continued lapse of this important program, all for a TAA program that does not work. The results of Washington brinkmanship have a real-life impact across this country. So while I'm hopeful that we will finally extend the GSP package today, I'm disappointed Washington political games made our small businesses like the Burger Company wait so long. I yield back.
A woman yields back. The gentleman from Washington.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Excuse me. I rise to express my strong support for H.R. 2832, which is extending what have been historically two programs that have received strong bipartisan support. Beginning in 1962, the TAA bill was originally put in under the Kennedy administration, and it's been extended for all these years. And the general system of preferences has also been there for a long time. Our importers and exporters have been using it as ways of getting things into the United States that have made real differences not only for our people, but for people in developing countries. Now, TAA provides critically needed assistance to workers who lose their jobs as a result of trade. I don't think anybody would argue, it'd be hard to find anybody on the floor of the House who wouldn't say that trade causes displacement of workers. There are jobs that move here and move there, and this is a recognition of that and a statement that we care about what happens to workers and that we give them some kind of help. It provides them with support and education and training so that they can obtain new jobs in growth sectors. In my state, we used to do log exports. Logging was a big issue. Then it went away. Well, you have to retrain people, and community colleges have trained a lot of people in this kind of thing. In 2009, Congress made some much-needed reforms in TAA, many of which addressed and passed criticisms of the program. These reforms included extending TAA to cover service workers and more manufacturing workers, offering long-term training and increasing training funds and increasing the health care coverage tax credit. This was probably the most important of the reforms. When people lose their job, they have no health care. And everything that you have in your life can be wiped out by an illness or an injury. So the idea that you can get COBRA, that's a nice idea, but you got to have money to do that. Most of the unemployment checks in this country don't make it possible for people to take advantage of the COBRA. So when we had this increase in support from the federal government for the workers, we were really looking at the real problems that people face. Now, unfortunately, last winter, the House leadership let the 209 reforms lapse, leaving a lot of workers just hanging out there. The general assistance of preferences was also permitted to expire, which harmed businesses that rely on the program both in developing countries and in the United States. And while it's long overdue, I'm pleased to see we're finally moving the legislation to expand both of these programs. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting H.R. 2832, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Rules Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. DREIER.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 3 minutes. Without objection.
Extend my remarks. Madam Speaker, it's taken a long time for us to get here. We've had hours and hours of debate last night and today, and literally years and years and years of discussion, of negotiation, and a lot of anguish and a lot of pain, but we have finally gotten here. I want to begin by expressing my great appreciation to a man with whom I've been pleased to partner in co-chairing what has been a long-standing group known as our Trade Working Group. It's sometimes partisan, sometimes bipartisan. It began 2 decades ago when Bill Archer was chairman of the Rules Committee and Phil Crane chaired the Trade Subcommittee, and with every chairman and of the Ways and Means Committee and the Trade Subcommittee, I've been privileged to join with them in working to build these coalitions for the very important goal of breaking down barriers to ensure that we can have access to consumer markets for union and non-union workers in this country, and this is what it's all about. Dave Camp has done a phenomenal job in negotiating these trade agreements, and the issue that's before us today, which is trade adjustment assistance. Now, I know that there's a lot of concern about it. I, frankly, am not a huge enthusiast, but I recognize that while there is a net gain when it comes to the issue of global trade, there are some workers who are displaced. And so while some people have been saying that those of us who are enthusiastically supporting the Korea, Panama, and Colombia free trade agreements are greatly exaggerating the positive impact of this, I've got to say that I recognize that there are some people who are going to be going through challenging economic times as a byproduct of this agreement. That's why, as we look at this 21st century economy, it is critically important for us, Madam Speaker, to do everything that we can to ensure that our fellow Americans, U.S. workers, have the kind of training and expertise necessary to deal with this global economy in the 21st century. And that's exactly what the trade assistance package is all about. Trade adjustment assistance package is all about. It's a modest package of $300 million, and I know that last night Mr. Camp has just informed me that he outlined the details of it to the House. He worked with the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Mr. Baucus, and others to get this to the point where we are. But we are now winding down this debate, and I have to say that when you think about the fact that Ronald Reagan on November 6th of 1979 announced his candidacy for President of the United States, and in that speech it was seen as heresy. I mean, it was almost a joke, Madam Speaker. Ronald Reagan said that he envisaged an accord of free trade among the Americas so that we could allow for the free flow of goods and services and capital. And he was laughed at here in the United States, and he was laughed at throughout the hemisphere. And we have since that time...
I yield the gentleman an additional minute.
And we have, I thank my friend, and Madam Speaker, since that time we have seen tremendous changes taking place. It's been almost 32 years since Ronald Reagan made that announcement, and last Monday, a week ago Monday, on October 3rd, Democratic President Barack Obama sent these agreements for us to consider, and here we are now doing this. There are so many people who have been involved in this. One of the things that has really impressed me, Madam Speaker, has been the involvement by members of this, the 87, now I guess 89 new members on our side of the aisle who have brought about the change in the makeup of this institution. And people who have stepped to the forefront: Tom Reed, Rick Byrd, Tim Griffin, Bob Dole, Kiko Canseco, and many others who have felt strongly about the need to get our economy growing and know that in so doing we will be able to create jobs for U.S. workers. Change over the last 5 years since these agreements were put into place, signed, have been absolutely incredible. Could I ask my friend for just an additional
30 seconds?
Yeah, additional 30 seconds. And let me just close by saying, over that 5-year period of time, Madam Speaker, we have seen so many tremendous changes that have taken place. 5 years is half the life for someone who was born, a child who was born on September 11th. And the changes in our economy, the global economy, dealing with issues that weren't even addressed then. The iPad didn't exist 5 years ago when these were put into place. Issues like encryption, cross-border data flow, things like intermediary liability, privacy, those were barely discussed then. Today, those are critical, important issues. This is a very small first step towards regaining our position as the world's global leader. And I thank my friend for his support and thank all of our colleagues who have been involved in this.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Washington.
Madam Speaker, I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Brumano.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 2.5 minutes. Without objection.
How much
2.5 minutes.
How much time?
Gentleman's recognized for 2.5 minutes.
3 minutes.
Oh, 3.5.
3.5 minutes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Yeah, moving it along here. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 2832, the Trade Adjustment Assistance Extension Act of 2011. This legislation continues vital coverage of the TAA program while it expands the General System of Preferences, a key trade and development program. We have a responsibility to assure that our workers, communities, and economy can adjust to a rapidly globalizing economy. As Congress advances international trade opportunities for our firms, it has an opportunity to assure that American workers can also compete. Since 1962, the TAA has expanded to respond to the continual changes to the economy and the global system. Among the most significant changes were those that we made when the Democrats were in charge just in 2009, which expanded the program to include service workers as well as improved the coverage of reemployment benefits, job search benefits, relocation, and health care benefits. It produced tangible results. The coverage in 2008 certified 125,000 workers. As a result of the changes we made in 2009, 280,000 workers were certified. The expansion of the program appropriately reflects the challenges trade poses to our service economy and continues our commitment to the manufacturing sector. In my state alone, 2010, the coverage reached over 10,000 workers and directed $30 million in federal funds to carry out those efforts, support our economy as it adjusted to competition from international trade. It's interesting to see the broad range of supporters. The Communication Workers of America say that TAA is a critical lifeline in providing retraining and education, helping service workers to pull themselves back up and find good new jobs. While the U.S. Chamber of Commerce will score the vote on TAA, writing that this legislation is a thoughtful compromise that preserves the more effective elements of the 5-decade-old TAA program. I'm also pleased that we are dealing with the generalized system of preference. I think my good friend from the state of Kansas may have been confused. I was frankly frustrated that it had been held up. We passed it in the last Congress. There was nothing to have prevented my Republican friends from bringing it forward at the beginning of this Congress. In fact, I wish that they would. But they didn't get around to it till September. I don't know why, but I think the criticism is misplaced. But regardless, each day without action on GSP costs American companies $1,800,000 in extra unnecessary import tariffs. I watched as the expiration of GSP cost Evergreen Container in Portland, Oregon, $50,000 already this year. $10,000 for this company, $70,000 over here, another $5,000. It adds up $1.8 million a day. But it's more than just a trade agreement and helping American companies. Under the GSP program, we judge our trading partners on the protection of American commercial interests, such as the protection of intellectual property, preventing the seizure of property belonging to U.S. citizens or businesses. We judge them on the protection of individual rights, the protection of commonly accepted labor rights, and the elimination of child labor.
The gentleman, an additional minute.
We ought to add the protection of the environment to this criteria. I raised it in our Ways and Means hearing, and it was the thought was we were going to go ahead and not adjust the status quo, but the protection of the environment exerts tremendous influence on international trade. The trade in illegally logged timber, for instance, cost U.S.-based legal timber industry billions of dollars a year. If we truly expect trade to be a tool of development, trade must support environmental protections in our partner nations, as our free trade agreements do. Concern for the environment is a core element of development. It reflects appreciation for civil law, for the protection of the rights of individuals, and of a concern for the long-term sustainability of state and society and of the planet. It should have a place in our GSP program. I hope when it comes next before us that we've added environmental protections to the criteria. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you. At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Chair, I propose to strong support of the bill. I can speak very clearly about the relationship that we have with Korea because in addition to being a General Motors dealer who sells Chevrolets and Cadillacs, I also sell Hyundai and Kias. And I can tell you that the alliance that we have had, the very strong partner we have had in Korea for so many years, since 1949, Korea has fought with us in every military skirmish, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, with us. In the United States alone, Hyundai has invested over $3 billion in bricks and mortar, in building 2 plants, one in Montgomery, Alabama, the other in West Point, Georgia. And when we're worried about the number of cars being sold here, let's understand one thing, that over 60% of the Korean cars sold in the United States are made by Americans. 60,000 jobs in the United States right now because of Hyundai and Kia's investment within our borders. And when we look at a market, a global opportunity, we have got to pass these trade agreements. We've got to pass the PA. Why? Because it's good for America. In addition to all these jobs and the possibility of 250,000 additional jobs in the country that's looking for a job almost every day. These jobs are there. They're available to us. We have got to get on with these trade agreements. In addition, let me also state that Hyundai and Hyundai dealers have raised over $43 million in the fight against pediatric cancer, which is over 10 times what this Congress has invested in that fight against pediatric cancer. The opportunities are outstanding right now. The opportunity is now. And what better time to pass these agreements than when we're hunting for the jobs that we need the most for our people? And also with allies who have stood shoulder to shoulder and arm in arm with us in every single battle. I would urge every member in this House to please pass the agreements. Let's move on. Let's get America back to work. I yield back, Mr.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Washington.
Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kind.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my good friend and colleague from the committee for yielding me this time. Madam Speaker, many of us have been rising throughout the course of the debate today, talking about the merits of the 3 pending trade agreements before us and why it's important for us to move forward on them. The reduction of tariff and non-tariff barriers, greater market access for the goods, products, services that are being made right here in America, a system of rules all countries have to abide by who are parties of this agreement. Core international labor and environmental standards included in the body of the agreement, fully enforceable with any other provision, the protection of intellectual property rights, and on and on and on. And that's why I'm supportive of the 3 bilateral agreements before us. But to be honest with the American people, and as long as trade remains a two-way street, there will be adverse impacts of trade on companies and workers here in America. And when that occurs, then the workers of that business should not just be left on their own. That's why the reauthorization of the trade adjustment assistance is important today, to move forward hand in hand with these trade agreements so that those workers will have an opportunity to upgrade their skills, to go to school, to have a better match in the job market and find placement as quickly as possible. And since 1962, the TAA program has assisted those workers who lost their position as a result of international trade, help them retrain and acquire skills needed for them to be more competitive in the global marketplace. In Wisconsin alone, in 2010, we had an estimated 10,359 workers who were covered by this program. And my state's not alone. In fact, the 3 largest TAA state recipients are Michigan, Ohio, California. In 2010 in Wisconsin, 52% of the TAA participants were successfully employed within 3 months of leaving the program. And 88% of those participants continue that employment over the next few quarters. The benefit of this program not only helps workers in my state, but also those specifically the western Wisconsin that I represent. In 2010 again, when Chart Energy in La Crosse moved some of its production line to China, approximately 230 employees were laid off, but they were able to receive reemployment and training services under the federal TAA program. When Northern Engraving Corporation shut down its Luxco division tool shop in La Crosse, 27 workers were laid off, and they too qualified for assistance so that they could get reintegrated in the regional economy. And there are many more examples of that throughout Wisconsin and I'm sure throughout the country, and that's why it was a bit discouraging that it took so long for us to reach agreement on TAA reauthorization when there's wide bipartisan support and great support on the outside, from the Chamber of Congress to the AFL-CIO saying this is the right and decent thing to do for America's workers if we are going to move forward on a proactive trade agenda. I want to take a moment and commend
my good friend and colleague, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Camp, for the work that he did with Senator Baucus in order to get the TAA reauthorization in the place it is today. I think it was very helpful. May I have an additional 30 seconds, Jim?
Gentleman is extended an additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank my friend. And as I mentioned in committee last week during the markup, I think it would make sense if the committee, Ways and Means that have jurisdiction, were to hold some hearings as we move forward on ways that we can improve the efficiency and the outcome of the TAA program. Any program is worthy of change and for improvements. I think this is ripe for that. My concern is this is only a 3-year reauthorization. I hope we can continue bipartisan support to continue us beyond the 3 years, so it's not having to be linked to other trade agreements. But I think our committee has some work to do to improve a very successful program. I encourage my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.